The afternoon sun beat down on the pristine pool, its crystal clear waters shimmering like a siren's call. But for James Sanderson, the sight only filled him with dread. He gripped the official envelope in his hands, the bright red lettering on the front mocking him. A $10,000 fine, he muttered, his voice trembling with disbelief. From the HOA. James stared out at the pool, the same pool his father, Carl, had fought so hard to build for the neighborhood. Now, it seemed, that very same pool had become the source of their family's undoing. Clenching his jaw, James stormed into the house, determined to confront his father. He found Carl hunched over the kitchen table, brow furrowed in concentration as he pored over stacks of documents. "Dad, what is the meaning of this?" James slammed the envelope down, the papers inside rustling with the impact. Carl looked up, his weathered face etched with worry. "I was afraid this day would come." He sighed heavily, running a hand through his thinning hair. "The HOA is fining us $10,000 for unauthorized pool modifications. But we followed all the rules. How can they do this?" James felt his blood boil, the injustice of it all weighing heavily on his chest. Carl held up a hand, silencing his son. "They claim we exceeded the permitted pool size, even though we had their approval. Now they're threatening to shut it down if we don't pay the fine." James paced the kitchen, his mind racing. "We can't afford that kind of money, Dad. What are we going to do?" Carl's eyes narrowed, a spark of determination igniting within them. "We're going to fight this. I won't let them bully us out of something we worked so hard for." Gripping the edge of the table, Carl rose to his feet, his shoulders squared with resolve. "I'm going to speak to the HOA board. They need to understand that this is our pool, built for the entire community. We're not going to let them take it away without a fight." James watched as his father strode out the door, his every step radiating a quiet, unwavering strength. He knew that look all too well. It was the same look Carl had worn when he'd first proposed the idea of a community pool years ago, facing down a skeptical HOA board. As the screen door slammed shut, James felt a surge of pride and fear. This was a battle he knew his father couldn't win alone. Steeling himself, he reached for his car keys, determined to stand by Carl's side, no matter the cost. The fight for their beloved pool had only just begun. The HOA board meeting was in full swing, a cacophony of raised voices and heated arguments echoing through the cramped community center. Carl Sanderson sat at the end of the long table, his eyes narrowed as he listened to the board members bicker. This pool is a liability, and the costs of maintaining it are simply too high. One board member argued, her manicured nails tapping against the table. "But it's the heart of our community." Another countered, her voice laced with desperation. "The residents love it, and it brings us all together." Carl cleared his throat, silencing the room. With all due respect, the pool was built with the approval and support of this very board. Now, you're telling me that you want to fine us $10,000 for unauthorized modifications that you yourselves approved. The board president, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Wilkins, pursed her lips. "The rules are the rules, Mr. Sanderson, and we have a responsibility to enforce them, regardless of the circumstances." Carl leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "This pool was built for the entire community to enjoy. It's not just ours. It belongs to everyone here. And you want to take that away because of a technicality." James, who had been standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. "My father's right. The pool is a vital part of our neighborhood. Shutting it down would be a devastating blow to all of us." Mrs. Wilkins raised a hand, silencing the room once more. "The decision has been made. If you don't pay the fine by the end of the week, we'll have no choice but to shut the pool down permanently." Carl felt a surge of anger rise within him, but he forced himself to remain calm. "This isn't over, Mrs. Wilkins. We won't back down without a fight." As the board members filed out of the room, Carl turned to his son, his jaw set with determination. "We're not going to pay that fine, James. We're going to take this all the way to court if we have to. James nodded, his own resolve hardening. I'm with you, Dad. We can't let them bully us out of something that belongs to the whole community. The fight was on, and the Sandersons were ready to go to war with the HOA to protect their beloved pool. The sound of a gavel echoed through the grand courtroom, silencing the murmur of spectators. Carl and James Sanderson sat at the defendant's table, their faces etched with determination as they faced the formidable HOA board and their team of lawyers. Order in the court, the judge boomed, his steely gaze sweeping across the room. We are here today to address the dispute between the Sanderson family and the Oakwood Homeowners Association regarding the community pool. Mrs. Wilkins, the HOA board president, rose to her feet, her expression stern. Your Honor, the facts are clear. The Sandersons violated the HOA's pool size regulations and made unauthorized modifications. They must be held accountable and pay the $10,000 fine. Carl stood, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Your Honor, we had that HOA's approval for the pool's construction and design. They're now trying to retroactively penalize us for something they originally approved. The judge's brow furrowed as he perused the stack of documents before him. This seems to be a rather complicated case. I'll need to review the evidence carefully before making a decision. As the proceedings unfolded, James watched his father's unwavering determination. Carl presented meticulously documented records, showing the HOA's approval at every step of the pool's construction. But the HOA's lawyers countered with strict interpretations of the community bylaws, arguing that the pool's size exceeded the permitted limits. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the judge listened intently, weighing the arguments on both sides. Finally, he cleared his throat, silencing the room. After careful consideration, I rule in favor of the Sandersons. The HOA's actions in fining them $10,000 for unauthorized modifications are unjustified, as the pool was built with their full approval and knowledge. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom as Mrs. Wilkins and the HOA board members stared in disbelief. Carl and James exchanged a relieved glance, their shoulders sagging with the weight of the victory. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am ordering the HOA to pay all legal fees incurred by the Sandersons in this case. The community pool is to remain open and accessible to all residents. As the gavel fell, signaling the end of the proceedings, Carl and James embraced, their laughter and tears of joy mingling together. They had won the battle, but the war with the HOA was far from over. The sun had long set by the time Carl and James Sanderson returned home, their victory in the courtroom still fresh in their minds. As they pulled into the driveway, they were greeted by a sight that sent a chill down their spines. The community pool, the very heart of their neighborhood, lay in ruins. The once pristine water was a murky, stagnant mess, and the surrounding deck had been vandalized, its wooden planks ripped up and scattered across the grounds. No, Carl whispered, his voice tinged with anguish. They couldn't have. James clutched his father's arm, his eyes wide with disbelief. Dad, who would do this? Carl's face hardened, his jaw set with determination. The HOA. They're trying to send us a message. Without hesitation, Carl rushed into the house, emerging moments later with a phone in his hand. He frantically dialed the number for the local police station, his fingers trembling with rage. Yes, this is Carl Sanderson. I need to report an act of vandalism at the community pool. Yes, it's urgent. Please send someone immediately. As Carl relayed the details to the dispatcher, James surveyed the damage, his heart sinking with each passing moment. The pool, their community's beloved gathering place, had been reduced to a nightmare of broken and discarded fragments. Within minutes, the sound of sirens pierced the night, and a squad car pulled up to the scene. 2 officers stepped out, their expressions grim as they took in the extent of the destruction. Mr. Sanderson, can you tell us what happened here? One of the officers asked, notepad in hand. Carl's voice shook with barely contained fury. This is an act of retaliation by the Oakwood Homeowners Association. They're trying to strong-arm us into paying their ridiculous fine, even after we won in court." The officers exchanged a knowing glance, their faces etched with sympathy. "We'll do our best to investigate this thoroughly. In the meantime, we'd advise you and your family to stay vigilant." As the officers began their examination of the scene, Carl and James stood in stunned silence, the weight of the situation sinking in. They had won the legal battle, but the HOA was now waging a personal war, and the future of their beloved pool hung in the balance. The following days were a whirlwind of activity for the Sanderson family. Carl and James spent countless hours coordinating with the police, assisting in their investigation of the pool vandalism. Meanwhile, the HOA board remained elusive, refusing to comment on the incident or take responsibility for the damage. Tensions within the community reached a boiling point as the news of the pool's destruction spread. Residents, who had once enjoyed the tranquil waters and lively gatherings, now found themselves divided, some sympathizing with the Sandersons, while others sided with the HOA's hardline stance. "This is a clear act of retaliation," Carl argued passionately at a town hall meeting, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "The HOA is trying to bully us into submission, but we won't back down. This pool belongs to all of us, and we won't let them take it away." James stood by his father's side, his expression resolute. "We're not going to let them win. We'll rebuild this pool, stronger and better than ever, and we'll fight them every step of the way." The crowd erupted in cheers, the air thick with a sense of defiance and community spirit. But amidst the support, there were whispers of caution and concern. "What if the HOA tries something else?" one resident murmured. "They've already shown they're willing to go to extreme lengths to get their way." Carl raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "We're not going to live in fear. We'll take every precaution, but we won't back down. This pool is our legacy, and we'll protect it with everything we've got." As the town hall came to a close, Carl and James found themselves surrounded by a group of determined neighbors, all offering their time, resources, and support in the fight against the HOA. "We're with you, Carl," one man said, his voice resolute. "This pool is the heart of our community, and we won't let them take it away without a fight." Buoyed by the outpouring of support, Carl and James knew that the battle was far from over. But with their community standing by their side, they were more determined than ever to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The hammers echoed through the air, their rhythmic beats punctuating the hum of conversation as the community rallied together to rebuild the vandalized pool. Carl Sanderson stood back, his eyes shining with pride as he watched his neighbors work tirelessly, their faces etched with determination. "This pool is going to be better than ever," James said, a grin spreading across his face as he helped a group of volunteers haul in new decking materials. Carl nodded, a sense of hope blossoming in his chest. The HOA thought they could break our spirit, but they underestimated the power of this community. As the days wore on, the pool began to take shape, the once broken and discarded pieces giving way to a sleek, modern design. The residents worked in shifts, refusing to let fatigue slow their progress. But just as the final touches were being put in place, a familiar black SUV pulled up to the construction site, and Mrs. Wilkins, the stern-faced HOA board president, stepped out, her expression thunderous. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. Carl strode forward, his chin held high. "We're rebuilding our community pool, Mrs. Wilkins. The court has ruled in our favor, and we won't let your vandalism stop us." Mrs. Wilkins' eyes narrowed, and she jabbed a manicured finger in Carl's direction. "This pool is in violation of our bylaws. You have until the end of the week to tear it down or face the consequences." James stepped forward, his own anger evident in the set of his jaw. "The court has already ruled that the pool is ours. You have no right to demand its destruction." "We'll see about that," Mrs. Wilkins spat, her gaze sweeping across the gathered crowd of volunteers. "This is not over, Sandersons. Mark my words." As she stormed back to her car, Carl and James exchanged a worried look. The HOA was clearly not ready to concede defeat, and they knew that the battle was far from over. "We can't let them intimidate us," Carl said, his voice low and determined. "We'll keep building, and we'll fight them in court again if we have to." The community members nodded in agreement, their resolve strengthened by the confrontation. They had come too far to give up now, and they were prepared to stand their ground against the relentless onslaught of the HOA. The courtroom was once again in session, the Sandersons and the HOA board members facing off in a renewed clash of wills. Carl and James sat at the defendant's table, their expressions grim as they listened to the arguments presented by the HOA's legal team. "Your Honor, the Sandersons have flagrantly disregarded our community's bylaws and built an unauthorized pool that exceeds the permitted size," the HOA's lead attorney argued, his voice dripping with condescension. Carl rose to his feet, his eyes narrowed. "Your Honor, we have already proven that the pool was built with the HOA's full knowledge and approval. The court has ruled in our favor, and we won't let the HOA bully us into tearing it down." The judge held up a hand, silencing the room. "It seems we have a rather unique situation here. The court's previous ruling was clear, and I'm not inclined to overturn it without substantial new evidence." Mrs. Wilkins stood, her expression resolute. "Your Honor, the Sandersons have changed the pool's design, and it now clearly violates our bylaws. We have no choice but to demand its removal." James leaned forward, his voice laced with frustration. "Your Honor, we've rebuilt the pool exactly as it was before, with the same dimensions and specifications that the HOA approved. They're simply trying to find any excuse to take it away from us." The judge's brow furrowed as he reviewed the documents before him. "I'll need time to carefully consider the evidence presented by both sides. This is a complex issue that requires a thoughtful resolution." As the courtroom erupted in a flurry of activity, Carl and James exchanged a worried glance. They had come so far, only to find themselves once again embroiled in a legal battle with the relentless HOA. "We can't give up, James," Carl whispered, his hand resting on his son's shoulder. "This pool is our legacy, and we won't let them take it away from us without a fight." James nodded, his own determination renewed. "We'll do whatever it takes, Dad. We're not going to let them win this time." The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the judge retired to consider his verdict. The Sandersons knew that the fate of their beloved pool hung in the balance, and they were prepared to go to the bitter end to protect it. The courtroom fell silent as the judge re-entered the room, his expression unreadable. Carl and James Sanderson held their breath, their hearts pounding with anticipation. After careful consideration of the evidence presented by both parties, the judge began, his voice clear and resolute, "I rule in favor of the Sandersons." A collective gasp swept through the room as Mrs. Wilkins and the HOA board members stared in disbelief. Carl and James exchanged a relieved glance, the tension in their shoulders finally easing. "The HOA's claims that the Sandersons have violated the community bylaws with their pool reconstruction are unfounded," the judge continued. "The pool's design and dimensions remain within the approved limits, and the family has the legal right to maintain and operate it as they see fit." Mrs. Wilkins rose, her face flushed with anger. "Your Honor, this is an outrage. The Sandersons have clearly defied our authority, and we won't stand for it." The judge held up a hand, silencing her. "Mrs. Wilkins, I must remind you that the court has spoken. Any further attempts to interfere with or damage the Sandersons' pool will be met with severe consequences." As the gavel fell, signaling the end of the proceedings, Carl and James found themselves surrounded by a crowd of cheering neighbors. The community had rallied behind them, and their victory felt all the sweeter for it. "We did it, Dad," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "We fought for what was ours, and we won." Carl pulled his son into a tight embrace, his own eyes shining with pride. "Yes, we did. And this pool will always be a symbol of our community's strength and resilience." As the Sandersons walked out of the courthouse, They couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The battle with the HOA had been long and arduous, but in the end, they had emerged victorious, their beloved pool intact and their community more united than ever before. This was not just a victory for the Sandersons, it was a victory for the entire neighborhood, a testament to the power of standing up for what is right, no matter the odds. And as they looked towards the future, they knew that their fight had only just begun, for the bonds of their community would continue to be tested, but with each other by their side, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.